Noora
Thank you.
Niasari, congratulations on your film Tum. 12 minutes of pretty punchy cinema. Can you just, in your own words, describe the film to us?
Yeah, so Tom is about a 18-year-old girl who wakes up in a hotel room after a clubbing experience, and she doesn't know where she is or how she got there. The remaining 12 minutes is really about her emotional journey of this experience and situation that she finds herself in.
The film is basically an exploration about what happened to her. So that's the tension built into the story.
Yeah, exactly. It's very much a visceral, confronting, raw piece of cinema that's very much putting the audience in the shoes of this girl for 12 minutes of her life, and it's a one shot film. So yeah, I hope that people are given a particular insight that we haven't really seen on screen before.
Why did you make the film?
It was born out of a kind of frustration because I felt that there was some female experiences that were really inexplicable in words, and this frustration with communication really drove me to make this film. And frankly, I think there's a lot of untold stories from women, especially women of color, that are very much kind of buried in shame and a reluctance because they haven't been listened to, or they haven't had the chance to be understood, or there hasn't been given a platform. And so, I wanted to tell this very nuanced, particular story to kind of bridge a gap of understanding of these kinds of experiences.
Is that one of the reasons why you kept dialogue out of the film?
Yes, exactly. Because of the inexplicable nature of the experience, I wanted it to be a wordless film, a film without backstory. You're sort of just plunged into this situation without any understanding of before and after. And I really think that's important to get us really into her point of view of this particular experience, and really for her character, she doesn't know what happened before arriving in this situation. So yeah, so the wordless experience was important, and also I wanted it to be very universal. That's another thing, because these kinds of situations could happen anywhere in the world, and they do every day. And so that's part of the reason why it was without dialogue. But I mean, the sound design is really pertinent to the film as well, and that's something that we really crafted to build the suspense and tension of this thriller.
Well, I have to commend you on the sound design of the film, which starts off as a cacophony of sound and then slowly peters out to natural sound.
Yes, well, the sound designer Livia Razik and the composer Simon Walbrook, they did an amazing job. They really brought my vision to life, and I really commend them. And I think that the interactivity between the music and the sound design was really special to the film, and really gave it a kind of a separate life, which was really important.
Now, I'm presuming that it would have been easier for you to shoot this film conventionally with edits and multiple shots. You chose to shoot it in a single shot. I am presuming that it was much more difficult to do it that way rather than conventionally. You're smiling there, which tells me that that's true.
Yeah, it's very difficult.
So,
I mean,
firstly, tell
yeah.
me why you made that critical decision to shoot it in one shot?
Look, that was a decision I made, when I put pen to paper. I knew that this was something I wanted to be in a single take. And the reason for that is the intimacy and visceral nature of the experience that we wanted to capture. And I think that this uninterrupted experience as well is very important to the story and the way that I wanted to put the audience in her shoes. And also I felt frustration with the representation of these experiences today in cinema. Often they're told from a male lens or an objective lens, or cutting away from the in between moments and the aftermath of these moments. And I wanted to paint a full picture of the experience rather than a fragmented one or one that's removed. I wanted it to be like wholly in her world, in her headspace, in her experience. So that's why I chose the one shot. But my DOP was very supportive of that, and we worked very hard to realize this particular vision, which was very technical, actually, very challenging.
Were you in any way influenced by some of the famous long shots in cinema?
We definitely looked at references. There aren't too many that sat in the world of thumb. I think that our main reference was Victoria, which is this German feature film from a few years ago.
Extraordinary movie. An entire night captured in one shot. That was an incredible film.
Yeah, it's a wonderful piece of cinema, but at the same time, the camera is floating around, like that. It doesn't have the same singular focus, like moment to moment focus that Thumb has. So, yeah, we definitely looked at that as a source of inspiration.
Okay. And also, you have worked with Kiarostami,
Yes, I did a workshop with Kiarostami in 2015 in Barcelona, and I was mentored by him in that workshop where I made a short film, and I stayed in touch with him after that. And his work has been an inspiration my whole life, so it was really a dream come true to connect with him on a professional level.
Yeah, he's certainly responsible for some great long takes in his films. Just to allow you to let the world know how hard it is, can you just give us an idea about how difficult it is to shoot 12 minutes in one shot?
Yes, well, it was a 1-day shoot, and we did 13 takes of this 12-minute sequence, and it was particularly challenging because the performance of Gillian Nguyen, who just does an astounding job, is a very complex one and crosses so many emotions in that 12 minutes. And so the performative challenge of that is one aspect. And then also just making sure that the camera movement is like so precise and detailed for every single moment of her performance. And it also needed to be like a very intimate experience. So I wasn't even in the room. It was only the cinematographer and the sound recordist in the main room, the main set, and me and the rest of the crew were in another room on the same level of this hotel, with a monitor and walkie-talkies, and I had 3 assistant directors on different levels of the hotel, and it was this kind of crazy coordination effort. Yeah, and obviously, like, working in a live location, there's a lot of negotiating like timings of the action alongside, extras and things like that. So it's a very involved logistical process, apart from the incredible, performative work that the actors did, Gillian Ewan and Nick Barkler. And we had a long rehearsal session too. We had 2 rehearsal days in the lead up. I worked with a coordinator and a choreographer, and we also had 5 hours of rehearsal before we started shooting, so on location. So it was very planned, very detailed.
You're highlighting there the importance of rehearsal and of just going over something that complicated over and over again to make sure everybody hits their marks. It's also, I imagine, very taxing on your players who have to replicate that same pitch of emotion over and over again.
Yeah. Yes, it was very taxing for them, and I commend them for their amazing work. And we only really had 10 to 15 minutes between each take to reset, and for me to give performance notes, camera notes, sound. Everything just happened really kind of quickly, back to back. Everyone just did a wonderful job to meet the demands of that shoot day. It was a challenging one.
Was there one recurring issue or problem with shooting 12 minutes in one shot?
It was challenging not to be in the room, to be with, close to the actors. But at the same time, I think that's what was best, for the scene to play out in such an intimate way. And also the room was small. We didn't, we needed as much space for the DOP to be able to do his thing. So, that was probably the biggest challenge, was being, a little bit removed from the action. But, and also the technology, like the wireless signal dropping out, in certain parts of the location, and, having to review, and, so those were kind of the main challenges, on the day.
That's fine. I'll wait for the encyclopedia to come out from you about how to do a shot that's that complicated and that's that accomplished as well, because at the end of the day, the audience has to be in that room, and any flub, any technical hiccup is going to show. So kudos to you for pulling that off. And quite frankly, I'm shocked that you only did 13 takes. I was waiting for a Stanley Kubrick type response to that notion, saying it took 50 takes or something. So good on you.
Well, frankly, I wanted to keep going, but my first AD really kind of put her foot down. That's her job. So.
I was going to say, that's a great first AD. Not enough first ADs do that.
Yeah, Naomi Paul, she did a great job. Incredible sensitivity to the work and dedication. And it was midnight. Everyone was tired. It was the right thing to do.
How do you want the audience to respond to the film?
Look, I don't have any particular vision for that. I think everyone's going to respond differently to the film, obviously based on their life experience and attitudes towards these things. My hope for the film is that it creates more awareness and more courage, in the world. You make these films and you sort of put them out there in the world, and you don't really know what's happening, especially with a virtual world premiere. It's very difficult to get an insight into how people are responding, but so far there's been a really, really positive response, and it's having a powerful impact on people, and that's an amazing thing. That's something I'm proud of.
How did you get into film?
So actually I started architecture school when I was 17, and in my third year, my final year of that degree, I discovered film. I took a few electives and short film workshops. One was in Cardiff, and another one was in Beirut, and I made short documentaries during those workshops. And I fell in love with storytelling, with the possibility of giving voice to the voiceless, to people whose stories I hadn't seen before, and I wanted to see on screen. And so that became a real passion and drive for me. And so when I graduated, I decided to go down the filmmaking path, let go of the architecture career that my family was so proud of. But yeah, that was a challenge, kind of breaking away from family expectations to pursue this kind of career.
You were born in Tehran, and and I think you self-describe yourself as an Iranian-Australian.
Yeah, I was born in Tehran. We came here when I was 8 or 9 months old for my parents' university studies, and Iranian-Australian. I mean, I'm a dual citizen. It's a technical thing. I go back to Iran. I have a lot of family in Iran. I'm very connected to my culture and my language. I speak Farsi. I spoke Farsi growing up with my mom, and so I'm bilingual. I mean, I identify as both. There's a duality in that, and I've really come to terms with that.
Judging from two of the short films that you made that I've seen, you really like to incorporate that part of your life into your stories. And from the evidence so far, I think it's a very enriching quality to have. Are you intending to follow certain themes in your future work about cultural assimilation and about boundaries and language and notions of tolerance and so forth?
Yes, certainly. These are themes that I'm exploring in. Actually, I'm developing 2 feature films as a writer-director, and these are definitely themes that are going to be in those films. So, I mean, it's intrinsic to my identity, to my concerns, the way I see the world. And this notion of identity and the nuances of identity, belonging, the search for the meaning of home, maintaining your culture in a foreign land. All of these things are things that I think about all the time, and so obviously that's going to come through in my storytelling.
And it's very interesting, given your background, that you came to Australia very young in life, but you maintain links with your home country, but you are an Australian citizen as well. So, Noora, what is it to be Australian? What values do you define as being quintessentially Australian?
That's a very loaded question. Well, okay. So, I think, frankly, I think that we're all, guests in this country. This is the land of the First Nations people, and we're guests in their house, and this is how I see it. I don't know what it is to be Australian. I think that that's something, in progress. We're a young country, and we're still defining who we are. And there hasn't been enough recognition of the past, and so I don't really think that there's a definitive answer to your question. I think it's a work in progress, and we're all, hopefully, a lot of us in the industry are working towards making a more accurate depiction of our society and how it's shaped and how we want to see it.
You could be doing the same thing you're doing now, but as a writer. What is the power of cinema to you?
I think that cinema has more of a social impact. that I'm interested in. I mean, I have a lot of social concerns that I want to explore, and you know, I think in cinema there's a broader reach in terms of audience, and also I love the collaborative nature of filmmaking. The idea of spending the rest of my life in a room by myself writing, it's not super fulfilling. I like the idea of having a vision and then sharing that vision with a whole team and realizing something. And further to that, I love photography, music, and screenwriting. I mean, it's really just like a combination of all of the things that I love. And so it makes sense for me to to be making cinema rather than writing novels.
The topics that you've dealt with thus far, Noora, pretty heavy stuff. I've got a theory that while you're dealing with all this, very reflective and dramatic material, that somewhere inside you, possibly unconscious to you, a really funny romantic comedy is developing by itself and that will one day wake you up at 3:17 in the morning.
Oh yeah. Look, I'd love to. I mean, I'd love to do something a bit more lighthearted. It's just that I'm not sure that's who I am. It would be an interesting challenge. I'm not opposed to it. I just feel like comedy writers, people who are in comedy, they're intrinsically funny. That's part of their nature. It's part of their spirit. I'm just not sure that's who I am, but who knows, down the track that might be a challenge that I'd take up. But at the moment, it's more in the dramatic realm.
Now, you've been fortunate enough to be mentored by Abbas Kiarostami. Also, I understand you have a mentorship with Luke Davies. How is that going in this coronavirus world? Has that kind of interrupted the work you wanted to do with him?
No, actually, we had a session yesterday. The Mentor LA program, which is run by Australians in film, it's a fantastic program, and it's virtual. It's on Zoom, so we have several sessions on Zoom, over the course of a year, and it's an incredible privilege to be mentored by Luke. He's Oscar-nominated screenwriter, and incredible breadth of knowledge and understanding of cinema.
Do you ask him questions, or do you present him with a draft of something and then get notes back, or do you just ask him for advice? I'm just keen to know how it works.
It's all of the above. Everything you just mentioned, we do all of that. So, it's really fantastic. And but then I have unofficial mentors too. Like, I'm also being mentored by Gary Foster, who's a wonderful American producer. We're actually working on a project together as well. But, he's been my unofficial mentor for nearly 2 years now. And yeah, I think it's really important to have mentors, especially, as you're emerging and, getting an understanding of the landscape and, your place within it. So I'm very privileged to have these mentors.
Now, I just wanted to acknowledge some of your earlier work, which you did while you were doing your film studies, which cover the world. You've filmed in Chile, in Spain, in Beirut. I think you're 30 years old. According to your website, there's a reference to you being 26 4 years ago. So,
Okay.
is that correct? You're 30 years old.
I'm 30. Yes.
Well, that's quite a filmography that you've developed so far. How did you do it?
Thanks. You missed a few.
Yeah, and I couldn't find the films online, and I'd like to know how to get hold of them. But how did you do it? Most kids in their 20s are too busy clubbing and going out and driving around with their friends and going to the cinema. You were making cinema. Can you just give us a?
Well,
Go on.
I was learning. I mean, a lot of those films aren't online because I saw them more as learning experiences than films I want to be out there, in the world forever. Um, I mean, I had an intense curiosity and drive, during my 20s, and so I just kind of followed my instincts on those projects, and I just sort of went with it. I didn't really question. I didn't second guess myself. I mean, I think that's the privilege of being young. It's the film that I shot in Chile, I started when I was 21. I mean, I hadn't even gone to film school at that point, and we shot it on and off over 3 years. I learned Spanish. I lived in Chile for a while. It was a beautiful experience, and that was a kind of film school in itself. And so I don't know. It's just passion, drive, persistence, and dedication to the craft. And I mean, clubbing, and all these things that. Obviously, I have a life, and I have fun too. But it's about finding a balance, and I'm still definitely in a process of finding a balance. I was definitely very work driven in my 20s, and I'm trying to be more mindful of balance.